football roundup, and we've got some really interesting spring games this weekend. Let's start with this one. Alabama, 2 p.m. SEC Network. Ted, I know we're used to Alabama just reloading. A lot of change in Tuscaloosa, though, right? New OC, new DC. Now, the systems are probably going to look pretty similar because I feel like Saban, it's, hey, you run Alabama's offense, you run Alabama's defense, which is Saban's defense. But I am interested to see if Tommy Rees gets to implement a little more of his stuff, right? And they got an interesting QB competition, right? Bryce Young moving on. Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson are two different styles of QBs. So I know the expectation is what it is at Alabama, right? We're expecting them to look amazing, but with all that change, I am interested in getting my eyes on the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I mean, it's one of the first times that there's been at least some doubt about the future of Alabama, right? You know, with how good Georgia's done. They've won 2 national championships. You know, they've got some things that they've got to work on themselves, but you know, it felt like the first time that Nick Saban couldn't just point and click and hire whoever he wanted to as his coordinators.
You did this, Jeff Lebby. You did this.
You know, quarterback, we've seen Milroe. I haven't seen Simpson, but it's also the first time in a long time that they haven't had someone, at least in waiting. You know, we always knew about Hurts. When he was quarterback, we heard about how great Tua was, right? And Tua eventually took over. We heard about how good Bryce Young was before he took over. I haven't really heard a whole lot about these guys, you know? So I don't know. It's maybe that's a good thing that some of the spotlight is off Alabama to a certain degree, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of eyes focused on Bama this spring, see what they look like.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So that's, I think that's got a little more intrigue than it usually does because lost some guys, and I'm sure they're going to be a very good football team, but it does seem like there's more uncertainty and unknown surrounding that program for the first time in, a long time. So
yeah,
we'll see. All right. I know you're fired up for this one. I know you're going to fire up the DVR, right? Yeah. We have our obligations, right, to OU spring game, but God bless DVR and God bless YouTube. Oh, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do it, right? We put all of this on, and you can look at Teddy and I's unfortunate physical appearance as you consume the podcast. Colorado, Coach Prime, 2 p.m. on ESPN. Dude, where do we even start with this one? I feel like this is the most anticipated spring game in all of college football this year.
It's going to be awesome. Deion Sanders is going to be entertainment. Son at quarterback is a gifted player. They've got some solid players on the team, but tune in for entertainment. Do not tune in to expect to see, like, when you're watching Alabama and you're flipping back and forth between SEC Network and ESPN, it's going to look like a college team and a high school team is what it's going to look like. Don't expect Colorado to be a top tier football team at this point.
No, I don't think that is a reasonable expectation. But when you look at their depth chart, dude, it is transfer after transfer after transfer. And now that this spring portal window is open, right, through April 30th,
they may have some new players in the spring game.
Yeah, they're going to continue to add transfers. Like, they've had a ton of guys enter the portal. And I guarantee you that is Deion Sanders saying, hey, you are not good enough to play for me. I'm sorry. Go find somewhere else, which is harsh, but man, it is what it is. People do not realize how bad that roster was a year ago. They were, for all the games I watched, like, I thought that they, by a pretty wide margin, were the worst roster I saw in the Power Five, where I was just like, oh, it was bad, but you're right, man. There's no doubt Colorado's going to blow this thing out, right, in a big way. And I'm certainly interested in what happens on the field, but I'm also wanting to watch it because there's going to be some hilarious entertainment things mixed in. I have no doubt about that. So I'm maybe more excited about that than I am about watching Shedeur Sanders toss it around the yard. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. I'll tell you what's crazy though, man. What were they 1-11 last year?
Yeah, they were awful. So bad.
They were a 1-11 football team, and they're going to have like the who's who of recruits are going to be at that game. Number one recruit in the country is going to be there amongst others. There's a ton of guys that are going to be there. So just that alone, I'm not suggesting that the number one recruit in the country is going to go there or that they're even going to have a top 25 recruiting class. I don't know. But the fact that that is occurring tells you that they're going to be better in the future with time. Like they are in on recruits that they haven't been in on maybe ever.
I am a firm believer that if Deion Sanders stays there for an extended period of time, they're going to be competing for a Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
Or Big 12 if they end up coming home.
The problem is if they do too good in year one, there's going to be an upgrade offered.
Yeah. My Sirius XM radio producer, Robbie Triano, he's got a theory that Deion's going to crush it at Colorado and he's going to be the next head coach at Bama.
Wow. Well, shockingly, I'm not taking it off the table.
I know. All right. Another fun spring game, Nebraska, 1 p.m. on Big Ten Network. I think it's just going to be cool to get our first look at Matt Rule. There's the head man in Lincoln. I would expect the physicality of that team, right? Going back and thinking about what we saw from Rule's Baylor teams, I'm expecting the physicality of that entire program to ramp up. It's cool. They're going to be honoring Frank Solich, which is long overdue. I'm really just interested in what they look like schematically, offensively, and defensively. By the way, Casey Thompson's still there. Now he's banged up, so we're not going to see him. But do you remember Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech?
Yeah.
Just amazing looking QB.
Yep.
He transferred to Nebraska. So
yeah, it's interesting. They've got some issues roster wise there. What they've got is they got a lot of size, a lot of like weight room strength. They got tough kids. They just have totally forgotten how to win. So I'm not going to limit anything that Rule can do at Nebraska, but he's got more headwinds in recruiting than Deion does at Colorado for different reasons. But, Nebraska has maybe as much or more backing right now behind that football program than they've ever had, and maybe as much as anyone in the country. There's some Benjamins behind that program right now.
Yeah. And I'm expecting, and maybe it's too lofty of an expectation, but I'm expecting that thing to be sold out.
Oh, yeah. I'd be shocked if there wasn't. I don't know how many that place holds, 85,000 more.
They got great fans, man. Great fans.
But it'll be packed.
Yeah, I think that's a fun one, right? I don't expect Nebraska to really compete in the Big Ten. Really, I don't really expect them to compete in the Big Ten for the next couple of years, but it will be fun just to see Matt Rule in the red and white smock and just working it. I can't wait. I love that guy.
He'll talk to no less than 10,000 people that day.
Oh, truly nothing like watching him before a game, right? Just working the entire field, talking to everyone.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Impressive. It is.
Yeah. All right. We got Wisconsin, 1 p.m. on Big Ten Network. I feel like this is a program. Luke Fickell, who's a fantastic coach, ends up making the move from Cincinnati to Wisconsin. I feel like I just haven't heard a ton about them throughout the offseason, right? And Wisconsin is always a little unassuming, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that Wisconsin's going to be running a spread air raid offense.
Yeah.
And Phil Longo went from North Carolina and running that system. He is now the offense coordinator at Wisconsin. And Tanner Mordecai most likely going to be their quarterback, right? So there's a little OU flavor in that. Like, I want to see Tanner Mordecai running a spread offense in a Wisconsin jersey. It's going to look so strange watching Wisconsin operate that way, but I can't wait. I can't wait to get a glimpse of it.
Yeah. I'm interested in it because I feel like this could either be, if done right, can be great, or if done wrong, can really set Wisconsin back.
Right.
They have something they hang their hat on at Wisconsin, and that is offensive line and power running game. Right. And yes, it has held them back on offense to a degree, right? But I think if you totally abandon that, it's a huge mistake. Great offensive linemen want to go play at Wisconsin because of the history and the tradition there. If they do this thing right and still stay true to that physicality up front in a spread type of offense and look, I mean, because it's not hard to keep some of those concepts in there. So I'm interested to see what it looks like.
Yeah. Now, Longo traditionally, I was looking at some of his North Carolina numbers the other day. He likes running the ball.
Yeah.
So I think.
Well, he also had a quarterback that could run it like crazy too.
Yeah.
I mean,
It would have been nice if we would have brought Drake May with him.
No doubt.
I think that I think one of the challenges for that staff is like, okay, how do we blend the two? Right? How do we blend the tradition and what we've really excelled at in that program with modernizing the offense and making it more efficient, right? To where you can go score some more points. That's going to be challenging, but that's why I'm excited to watch. I want to see, it'll be vanilla. I understand that, but I just want to sit down and watch Wisconsin be in 5 wide and throw like a bubble screen, you know?
Yes. No, that's right. When I think of Wisconsin and what I wish they were in college football, I think of Greg Roman's offense.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I like that.
Because it's you
gotta have the right QB to run that.
You do, and that's been a big problem for him. A lot of things get fixed if you have the right quarterback, and maybe they'll find him.
Yeah. All right, we got some Big 12 spring games. Are you interested in any of these? We got West Virginia at noon on ESPN Plus, Texas Tech noon on ESPN Plus, Baylor noon on ESPN Plus. I wonder if they all got together and say, "Hey guys, let's go noon." But also Iowa State, but I don't think Iowa State's is televised because classic Iowa State. Any interest in any of those Big 12 spring games?
Yeah, I've got interest in all of them. I wonder how Neil Brown bounces back.
Coaching for his job.
I thought it was done last year. I guess beating Oklahoma helps you out. We'll see what he can do. Texas Tech, I think, is interesting. They're in what I think may be a difficult spot for them, where they're coming into this season with some expectations, and I think that McGuire's done a good job there through year one, and they've got some good energy behind the program, and he does a great job at recruiting and finding the hidden gems out there throughout Texas high school football. But they had like 10 senior starters on that defense from a year ago. They had a guy that's going to be at a minimum a top 10 pick, maybe a top 5 or higher. Who knows? they're losing a bunch off of that team, and I'm just not sure how they bounce back.
Yeah. And I think the thing I'm most interested in is that quarterback competition. But they got an old guy and then a guy in Baron Morton that, has a lot of high expectations, right? With how highly he was recruited. But I don't know. Is it going to be the Tyler Shuck show? Who knows? But yeah, there's definitely some hype around Texas Tech. I get the sense that you remember how people were talking about Kansas State before last season. Everyone's dark horse was Kansas State. Everyone said no one's talking about Kansas State, even though everyone was saying no one's talking about Kansas State. Texas Tech with the successful year one under Joe McGuire, it feels like momentum is building towards some people thinking Tech could be the dark horse heading into this season.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not gonna take that away from them. I'll be watching it curiously, especially on defense.
Yeah, we'll see. I am a little interested in Baylor. Blake Shapen,
quiet,
very quiet, so quiet. Which Dave Aranda, let's not the loudest of guys, right? But I mean, this has been and I know they had a disappointing season a year ago, but it's been a successful program, right? That's been through a lot. Don't get me wrong, but it's been awfully quiet, right? And I want to see what Blake Shapen looks like. I thought he underperformed a season ago. It was too up and down. He had some moments where you're like, that guy is amazing, and then he had some moments where you're like, this guy, is this the first time he's played quarterback?
Right.
So that, and you put, Richard Reese was awesome at running back for him as a freshman last year. I'm interested to see just how he looks physically, but yeah, very quiet on the Baylor front.
Yeah, and I don't know what to make of it because and I think we talked about it on here because I had heard that maybe Aranda was sniffing around at the Wisconsin job, which, that makes sense for multiple reasons. But is there something there that he senses? Because he took over a pretty good roster. All right. They had some really good players on there. And McGuire was really, I mean, obviously they've got a good coaching staff that recruits well, but McGuire was kind of the real key behind the scenes in recruiting and being in with everyone in Texas high school. So has McGuire kind of stolen that thunder and taken it to Texas Tech, and they've graduated a lot of those guys that really built that program up to what gave Aranda the quick success? I don't know. I'm just kind of curious there about what's going to happen.
Yeah, when you look at Baylor's situation, just from a recruiting standpoint, right? Now, every big program across the country is coming to the state of Texas trying to take the most talented players out of that state, right? Your Bamas, your Georgias, your Ohio States. And then you've got the big time programs that are close, right? OU, Texas, Texas A&M. So you're already having to deal with you're battling all of those big time brands for the talent in your state. And your niche when Joey McGuire and Matt Rule were there was like, hey, we identify guys with the measurables that may not have the production that we think we can develop. We develop those guys. They become really, really good players and become draft picks, right? That was the formula, right? Well, now you got Joey McGuire identifying all of those guys, and he's got better relationships than anyone on your staff has with all the coaches in the state, right? When it comes to, hey, the under the radar, like the below the radar guys. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like being Dave Aranda right now and trying to recruit guys that all these other schools are recruiting. And now Joey McGuire's identifying those guys. That it can't be easy.
You've had to start recruiting against yourself, essentially, like for the tier of guys that that used to be your thing. Now there's more competition in that market also. So yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. It's something to watch for sure.
Yeah.